Good morning, everybody. Perhaps early afternoon. Welcome in to the final regular season first look for here at Establish the Run. We are here. We made it to week 18, what I always call the carnival week because it is chaos. This week, perhaps a little bit less than years past. We're going to discuss all of it. If you have not joined us here before, welcome to the final regular season week. I am your host, Gary Hartman, here with you to give a first look, an initial impression at the upcoming DFS slate, if you will, transition our heads from one week to the next. I do this show a little bit different than I have every other one this year because there's so much in the air, particularly in terms of motivation, right? And if you're an Established Run subscriber, we'll go through this article on this show, but Anthony Amico published our Week 18 motivation article that will update with any coach speaker or quotes that we get. But really important to know what every team is playing for. To a less extent, it's important to know what individual players have some motivation to play for, contract incentives, etc. We'll talk about those if they are relevant as well. So what I like to do, per usual, is just to set the table for what this week looks like. Once again, week 18 is always a massive slate. We have 13 games. In the past, we've had all 15 go on at once. So that helps a little bit that we've had 15 of 16 go on at once. So it helps a little bit that we only have 13. We do have 2 Saturday games this week. Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and Houston, Indianapolis. That Houston, Indianapolis is a huge game for the AFC South. But the Pittsburgh, Baltimore game, Pittsburgh needs to win to have their hopes alive, and it's a Saturday, so they might win. They might try to play. Baltimore has nothing to play for. They are locked in to the 1 seed. That's all relevant, but it is important to know that Pittsburgh, Baltimore not on the slate, Houston, Indianapolis not on the slate, so no Lamar, no CJ Stroud, and then a big one that's off the slate is our Sunday night football game, Bills and Dolphins. That's a massive one. That's not on the slate. Every other team is playing on this main slate, okay? So 13 games. And what I'm going to do, I might go a little bit more than 30 minutes today, is go game by game here instead of position by position. I think that is better to kind of talk through each team's situation. Maybe if there's backups in play, we can kind of get into a little bit more of a detailed conversation instead of me going super rapid fire down the list of all players from a position standpoint. Still want to do what I normally do as far as set the table with over-unders and team totals and everything like that. So a ton of games in the 40s on the main slate. Nothing that's even scratching 50, though. The one game that would be an over-under on a 50 point is that Sunday night Bills Dolphins game. That was 49.5, not on the main slate. So our highest main slate game is Seahawks Cardinals, 47.5, one that I definitely have interest in for DFS purposes. Cowboys Commanders, 46.5, Lions Vikings, 45, Packers Bears, 44, Eagles Giants, 43.5, 49ers Rams, 42, Saints Falcons, 42. Then you're in your low 40s, high 30s. So just a bunch of okay game environments. And there's a lot that these teams are playing for, as I mentioned, kind of more than normal in week 18. And we'll talk through that. There's a ton of teams still alive for the playoffs, which is the parity that the NFL wants. I think they're certainly getting it. All right, team total wise, Dallas just shatters the rest of the slate with a 30. And that makes sense, right? They have everything to play for the division. And they're playing the Commanders, which is like the ultimate fantasy spot. So 30-point team total. I always talk about, I never ignore those 30s. Then you jump all the way down almost 4.75 points to the next one, to the Seahawks are 25.25. The Lions also 25.25. The Eagles are 25. Packers 23.75. The 49ers 23.25. And then everything else below 23. So that's kind of your top offensive environments: Cowboys, Seahawks, Lions, Eagles, Packers, Niners. I think there's other ones you can get into for sure. We'll talk about all of those. But that kind of sets the table here. I'm going to go back and forth to this article here. Really important that we all understand what every team is playing for. So I will go back and forth as we kind of go through games. I'm just going to start all the way to the left and we'll go quickly here. Tampa Bay, Carolina. Tampa Bay does have something to play for technically here. They need a win to make the playoffs. I guess if they win, they have a shot at the number 4 seed. If they lose, they're out. So they're going to be going all out here for sure. And then, as far as the NFC South is concerned, we'll talk more about the Saints and Falcons later. But the Bucs, I believe, are win and in. So Bucs win, they win the division, I think. And so Baker against Carolina. I don't really, we've been talking about it all year. I'm not really into attacking the passing offenses against the Panthers. I wouldn't completely rule it out on this slate. He's cheap enough, but the Panthers have definitely been able to stop the pass. What they have had trouble doing is stopping the run, and that does put Rachaad White back on our radar, coming off his first single-digit DraftKings point game since all the way back to week 6. He's been incredibly consistent both on the ground and in the air. And inefficient game the last week. That was a tougher matchup against New Orleans. The week before that, a little bit inefficient against Jacksonville. They just didn't need him as much as they dominated through the air in that game. I like this spot for him, though, where I think they want to control the game. That will often be done through Rachaad White. So 7-6 White, certainly going to be in play. Chuba Hubbard, also, if you're looking for a spend down option at running back, Carolina, obviously nothing to play for. They've already locked up the number one pick going to Chicago. But they haven't needed to play their starters for a while. They just want to keep developing their team. Evans and Godwin make my pool as ceiling guys, but again, not so interested in attacking the aerial attack for Tampa Bay in this spot. And then Thielen coming back to life a little bit. Targets have been there still. Only 6 for 38 last week against Jacksonville, but he had the 6 for 94 the week prior. I don't hate this spot, and the 6K tag is solid. I'm not really getting into anyone else here. Mingo, Chark, we'll talk about cheap wide receiver guys, and usually I don't even talk about them on this show, but there's going to be a ton of options for you on this slate. Tight ends, same thing. Kate Otten can make your pool. Not getting into any of the Carolina stuff. All right, let's go to Cincinnati and Cleveland. There isn't too much here. Well, the Browns are locked into the 5 seed, and the Bengals were eliminated last week. So there's really not much to play for in this game. We don't know if the Browns are going to play their starters yet. These are the types of games that I get scared off of attacking too big in the final week. Certainly from a quarterback perspective, I'm sure Cincinnati's going to throw Jake Browning out there. It's still a tough matchup against Cleveland. I saw Stefanski even said we can't sit all of our guys. It's just not the best spot in the world. That doesn't mean you don't want to attack certain pieces. And this is where keeping your ear to the ground from a news perspective is critical this week. If we get information on Cleveland playing certain backups or certain starters, then certainly you can get involved there. But Amari Cooper coming off the injury, Elijah Moore coming off the injury, maybe there's some really interesting spend down options. I don't know who's starting a quarterback though for Cleveland. Certainly would be interested in a Cedric Tillman perhaps at sub 4K. So keep an eye there and keep an eye on projections. We'll be on top of it from a projection standpoint. And then the Cincinnati guys you can consider, but still going to be a bad matchup. Maybe you want to give them a little bit of an upgrade because they're playing some Cleveland backups potentially, but something to consider. Njoku's been awesome. Can't imagine they let him go too crazy this week. And I don't think there's any specific contract stuff for either of these teams. So on an offense perspective. So not my favorite game to attack this week. Minnesota, Detroit though, sounds like these teams are going for it. And the Lions don't really have anything to play for. Technically, I think they can move up to the 2 seed, but they need both Dallas and Philadelphia to lose and them to win. That seems very unlikely given the opponents for Dallas and Philadelphia. But Dan Campbell, being very Dan Campbell, indicated that he plans to play his starters. Very Tom Coughlin-esque, if you will. So I'm not surprised by that. They're in division. The Vikings also technically are still alive. They need a win and then they need help, but they are alive. So they're going to be playing as a 1:00 Eastern game. So this is a division game. Both these teams don't want the others to have success. These teams are going to play. So this is definitely an interesting one. I mentioned 45 total on Lions Vikings. The Lions have a 25-point team total. Vikings probably not that far underneath 23 there. So you could consider these guys. Jaron Hall started last week, really struggled. Was benched in the second half, right? So I don't know where they're going this week. If they're going back to Mullins, I would guess they are going back to Mullins. I think you consider Mullins in the Dome at only 5-1, assuming he gets the start. So that's something to consider. And then Goff also. Now, Mike, I'd be concerned about Goff because they're planning on playing their starters. If they just decide that they want to take I guess both the Eagles and Cowboys are playing at 4. So they're not going to know what's going on for those guys. But if there's any chance they only play a half or something like that, I'm probably not getting into Goff despite it being a solid environment at home. The running back side of things, Gibbs had been awesome up until last week. I know he busted a lot of best ball teams for people that had gotten there with Gibbs. I don't mind getting into Gibbs or Montgomery if you want to attack the Lions side. I probably need correlation here. It's a huge slate. If I'm attacking a team that's kind of locked into their seed, I really want correlation. On the Viking side, it's a really bad matchup against on the ground. For Detroit, Ty Chandler, it is his backfield. Alexander Madison does have some contract stuff, but he needs 125 yards or something. There's no way they're trusting him in that kind of role. Probably not getting into too many running back stuff here. Receivers is where you wouldn't want to attack in this game. Both these teams struggle to stop opposing top-end receivers. You have Amon-Ra, obviously, at 8'6". It's one of the most expensive receivers on the slate. Again, correlation for the Lions. The Vikings, I feel good about playing regardless. So Jefferson, 8.5, still way too cheap for Justin Jefferson. I'm very interested in Jeff this week. And then, Addison can make your pool as a guy that had success against Mullins a couple weeks ago in that Cincinnati game. Probably not getting into too many other of these guys. Jameson Williams banged up his ankle. Curious if they take it easy on him. Had his big completion last week. I like Jameson Williams. I'm a sucker for him. I think he's a good spend down option there. Jets Patriots, obviously nothing to play for here. We can kind of go quickly through this one. It's going to be an ugly game environment anyway. Not getting into any of the quarterbacks. I guess you could put Zeke in your pool, and I guess you could put Breece Hall in your player pool. Garrett Wilson's too cheap. He can make your player pool. Pop Douglas. That's not a good matchup for Patriots receivers. I'm not going there. So it's really Garrett Wilson. It's Breece Hall. It's Ezekiel Elliott. And then I guess depending on who the starting tight end is for the Patriots, you can get into it. We can go quickly there. I'm not interested in that game. Atlanta, New Orleans. So I mentioned the NFC South stuff. So the Bucs, they need to win to make the playoffs, right? If they lose, I think whoever wins this game between the Saints and the Falcons get the division. And the winner, though, if the Bucs lose, I think one of the other two teams can still get in. I mean, if the Bucs win, I think one of the other two, the winner of this team can still get in the wild card, depending on what happens with the Seahawks and the Vikings. But and the Packers, I guess. But so it's a 1:00 game. So either they're in for the division or they have something to play for if the Bucs win, just based off, not kind of scoreboard watching. So something to consider here. Both these teams are going to play. So, in New Orleans, we're always interested in the dome environments. I kind of called out Derek Carr as an interesting piece last week. And even so, he had 202, did nothing else, 16 points. I just don't think there's ceiling on him or really Heineke in this spot. Heineke more so than Carr. So if you want to go there, I guess you can. Probably more interested in some of the running backs here. We'll see if Kamara plays. I'm not sure if he does. He's been rough second half of the season. Jamal Williams has been eating into that work. More interested in the Bijan Robinson stuff. Was very into Bijan last week. Did not find the end zone. Still super efficient. Had 18 touches. You like to see that, but only 11 points. I'm still banking on the ceiling and kind of eating it and just like eating the discount on price that we're getting there. Not interested in anyone else in this spot. And then Olave certainly can make your player pool coming off a down week, but we saw what he was able to do 2 weeks ago in week 16 with the 26-point game. Drake London as well is in play for sure at 5K. He's super cheap. He's your classic boomer bust type guy, but you kind of play into the upside. And then Rashid Shaheed, also a guy that either gets you 18 points or single-digit points. Maybe we get an 18-point week out of Shaheed. I think all those guys can make your player pool. As can Kyle Pitts and Juwan Johnson, who's having a real late season renaissance. 12 targets, 8 for 90 last week. I would make the argument, 3 straight games with a touchdown, that he is too cheap here. The one spot the Falcons really are vulnerable is in the middle of the field against tight ends. It seems like both these teams are. Juwan Johnson at only 3.6 for what he's been doing recently. I'm curious where ownership comes in, but in a game where motivation is there, that's an interesting play. Pitts also, I think he's been better with Heineke. Only had 5 targets last week, was only able to get 1 catch on them. Still don't trust the ultimate ceiling here, but he can make your tournament player pool. And then Taysom Hill also found the end zone, but I still think at 4.6, if Kamara's out, I'm a little bit more interested in Taysom Hill as a tournament dart. All right, going over to Jacksonville and Tennessee. The Jaguars definitely have something to play for here, and the Titans probably want to play spoiler. So I got to imagine both these teams are giving it a go. I believe the Jags win and they lock up the AFC South, and they're fully eliminated with the loss. So this is just straight up winning in, win or go home. And the other AFC South matchup from Saturday night, I talked about that also matters, but the Jags do have the upper leg for the division. If the Jags lose, whoever won the Saturday night game, I believe, wins the division. That doesn't mean that the Colts Texans can't both get in. I believe one of them can still get, or they will get one of the final 2 wild cards, depending on the Bills situation. If the Bills lose that game and this team wins and the Jaguars win, I believe the Bills are out, which is crazy. We'll talk about, I guess we're not talking about the Bills, but that's pretty crazy to talk about. All right, quarterback wise here, we'll see if Trevor Lawrence plays. I'd imagine they definitely want him out there for their season on the line. If he goes, I think you can make your player pool. Will Levis was out for the second half of last game. Curious to see what happens with him from an injury perspective. If you really wanted to get into the Levis or Tannehill of it all, I guess you can. It's a huge slate. I just don't know if I trust the ceiling there. Not a bad matchup, though. The Jags have been gashed through the air. ETN, tough matchup for him last week against Carolina. He was like the first. Good matchup against Carolina last week. They're bad against the air. So yeah, we'll say efficient on the ground, right? The 102-2 last week. This matchup much tougher against the Titans on the ground. Something to consider there. Again, they're going to feed him because they need to, but it's something to consider. Derrick Henry was disappointing. One last shot, probably his last ever game as a Titan here. Last home game. I'd imagine they wanted to go out on a high. I think they feed him. All right, wide receivers here. Good matchups down the board. DeAndre Hopkins is our first big incentive spot to talk about. There's a lot of Hopkins incentives. He needs 49 yards for a $1 million kicker, 7 catches for a $250,000 kicker. So you can make $1.25 million this weekend. You know the veteran. They're going to try to get him those numbers. This is a good matchup. He's only 6'1". I'd imagine Hopkins is going to be popular because it isn't like a secret that these contract incentives, people play into this stuff. He's going to be popular, but he's a good play. Ridley also, I like him for sure more if Lawrence is in, but we've seen the ceiling games. He's been he's yin and yang. He's boom or bust, but he's there. Zay Jones missed last week. We'll see if he's back. If he's back at 3.8, you can get into him or Parker Washington or Agnew or whichever guy is in there. From a tight end perspective, Ingram's been one of the best tight ends from a volume perspective all year. The guy's 104 catches. Like, that's his full point PPR. That's awesome stuff. But this is a tough matchup against Tennessee. I think you still go there in correlation. Chika Conko's come on a little bit at the end of the year, but did come down to earth last week with only a 3 for 34 game there. All right, let's keep going here to are we into the 4 o'clocks now? Yes, we are. Seattle, Arizona. Huge game here. And one that I think is a really fun one to attack from a DFS perspective. Because the Cardinals have been a team that we've been looking to attack all season, and Seattle has everything to play for. So they need a win to get in. They still need help. So they need to get in, they need a win, and they need a Packers loss. But Green Bay plays the same time as them. So we expect, as Anthony writes here, we expect the Seahawks to go all out here. Arizona probably want to play spoiler. Now they have draft position to play for, but division game. Kyler Murray's going to be they're going to try to win. And Arizona won against the Eagles last week. Now that scares me a little bit as far as come down game this week, but they're competitive almost every single week. So this is one of my favorite games to attack. No doubt about it. I think the field will be on it too, but this feels safe. It feels good. It's the highest over under on the main slate, 47.5. Cheap quarterback options at 6'4", 6'1". I think you could play both of them. And then running backs also, James Conner, breaking the slate last week. 3 of the last 4 games, over 20 points. They want to feed this guy, and it's a good matchup. Has a nose for the end zone. James Conner's a really good play at 6'1", and Kenneth Walker is too at 6'5". We thought, he might be less than 100%. We're getting more Charbonnet last week. He only had 13 touches. Charbonnet had 7. So, I think Kenneth Walker is certainly the guy you want in this backfield. Charbonnet can make your full-on MME player pool at only 5K in the nut matchup for running backs. Michael Carter also was involved last week. If you want to bring back is an ultimate spend down bring back, if you think that the Cardinals are playing from behind, I think you can consider him. It's thin though. That's lotto only. All the receivers, again, correlation pieces here, but I want all of them, right? Metcalf for sure is probably my top option to pair with Geno or on the other side of a Kyler stack. Lockett, been more of a down year, I'd say, for Lockett compared to previous years. Certainly Metcalf has looked more like the alpha, more consistent as well, but you got a big discount on Lockett. JSN, had the touchdown to salvage his day last week. Really boomer bust. Probably make my cheap wide receiver volume article. Again, I don't talk too much about these cheap receivers here. Everyone else on the Arizona side, check out cheap wide receiver volume. Tight end, Trey McBride, still had a 6 for 48 last week, but for how chalky he's been, he's disappointed the last 2 weeks, right? Only 10 DraftKings points about each of the last 2 weeks. I'm still very interested in going there. He's their wide receiver 1. Marquise Brown's officially done so. He seems interesting. Not getting into the Seahawks tight ends, but this is a good game. This is a game you definitely want exposure to. No doubt about it. So is this one, in my opinion. Assuming weather holds up in Green Bay. You never know about January weather in Green Bay. But the Packers are win. I believe they're winning in. Yeah, they are win and in here are the Green Bay Packers. So, they get a wild card. If they win, home matchup against the Bears. The Bears have been playing really solid football the second half of the year. I don't think this is any kind of gimme. Chicago has enough, they don't really care about this draft pick. They already got the number 1 pick. They're going to play. Both these teams are going to play. It is actually the 4th highest over-under on the main slate at 44. I'm interested in Fields for sure. 25 points in back-to-back weeks. He's had 24 or 25 in 3 of 4 weeks here. And yeah, I think that Fields is good. I think Love also finally is kind of, since that Giant game, has found his groove again from a fantasy upside perspective. So I don't mind him in correlation. When you look at the numbers at the end of the day for Love, I mean, it ended up being a pretty good season, right? He's probably going to end with over 4,000 yards, and he's got a 30-11 touchdown interception ratio. That's impressive. Aaron Jones, they finally have been feeding him the last 2 weeks. This is what we wanted to see. Aaron Jones, he's so clearly their most talented offensive weapon, especially when Christian Watson is down. Jaden Reed, very impressive in his own right, but 20 carries back-to-back weeks, over 120 rushing yards back-to-back weeks. I think you could do it again here against the Bears. Week 1 against the Bears, he had 26 points. Now that was all the way, a different world ago. These teams played week 1 and they're playing week 18, but something to consider. I like Aaron Jones at only 6'3" quite a bit, especially if you're attacking this game. And then, we're back to kind of that 3-headed monster, but Khalil Herbert has kind of established himself finally over these last 2 weeks as that really talented alpha back that some of us believed he could be heading into the year. Still a little bit scary when you're splitting carries 3 ways, but he's proven that he can make a player pool, I think, for sure. I'd probably just pick Herbert of the 3 and kind of go there. Jaden Reed, assuming he's good to go. I guess he did have a rib thing that he experienced in that game, but he just dominated. I know he won a lot of people best ball stuff in week 17 with a 6 for 89 and 2 touchdowns. The guy's shown a ceiling all year. If he's available, very interested in him. We got to keep an eye on who's available for all these guys. Is Christian Watson back? If Christian Watson's back at 4-7, I'm interested in there. Is Dontavian Wicks back? If Dontavian Wicks is back at 4-6, I'm interested there. DJ Moore, of course, has been the alpha for Justin Fields. Awesome. Been an excellent acquisition for Chicago. He's had a really good year. 92, 13, and 9. Massive ceiling. He's been optimal a ton. DJ Moore's great. So really just DJ Moore, depending on which of the Packers receivers are available for me to get into there. And then Kmet, very weird. He only been there playing 13 snaps. I think he was kind of limited during practice. Something was going on there. So let's keep an eye on any news on Kmet. If Kmet's in, you probably want him in lineups that you're attacking this game, at least on the field side, you're interested. If he's out, harder to get to. Tyler Kraft still makes your player pool right now, assuming Musgrave. I guess Musgrave is done he was doubtful last week. Yeah, I highly doubt. If Musgrave doesn't play, Kraft again will be on your radar. This game's a scary one because Chiefs have nothing to play for. Chargers probably at this point, I mean, maybe not with a new coach, but they're intentionally not intentionally trying to lose with the personnel they're putting out there. So the Chiefs are locked in to the 3 seed, and Andy Reid always sits his guys week 18, right? So we'll talk about some value guys maybe that we could play here. And what is a good matchup with the Chargers. Chargers obviously eliminated. So you're not playing Easton Stick even against backups. I don't think there's a ceiling there. I don't think you really want to play Blaine Gabbert either. I mean, he's 4.8 against the Chargers. Like, if you want to late swap into him, if you got crushed in the 1 o'clock hour, fine. Again, to me, that's the extent of your Blaine Gabbert exposure. And same thing here. Like, I don't know who's starting. Are we getting generic Prince action this week? Are we getting Keontae Ingram? Are we getting Michael Pirine? I guess keep an eye on any of our projections. And if you really want to take some shots on super cheap guys, these are the guys that historically in week 18 have been optimal, have broken slates. It's what makes week 18 such a carnival is when these teams are resting and you have running backs 3, running back 4s, practice squad guys that are called up, get 25 carries out of nowhere. I mean, it's the Matt Flynn game, right? We always know what happens. Like, so we don't know who's going to be the lead back here. Something to consider. What I do know is Austin Eckler has some incentive stuff. Now, I wouldn't necessarily think that he has too much of a chance of getting it for how he's been used this year and then, the overall incompetencies of the Chargers offense right now. But Eckler, 110 yards for 100K, 110 total yards, could be rushing and receiving. That's not totally out of the realm of possibility. If you want to give Eckler a little bump in your runs because of that, playing against backups, I understand. Receivers, same thing. Let's see. I mean, Chiefs have so many guys. They're going to play some of these dudes. Maybe we're getting like the Justin Rosses this week. Maybe we're getting some more Richie James. Maybe Mecole Hardman. Again, I'm probably not getting into that tier too much, but we could see. And then you'll see what happens with the Chargers. I know Alex Erickson was the guy last week. I think you can make your pool again at 3-7 against backups. And then tight ends too. Kelsey's no way Kelsey's playing. No Gray probably can make your pool if he's the guy, or Blake Bell if you're looking for a true punt. And then, Everett or Parham's in can make your pool. All right, Denver, Vegas, both these teams do not have anything to play for. But I think both these teams are going to play, right? Yeah, they're both more mid in the draft order. They can't really get up too high at this point. At least I don't think. Let's take a look. And then, obviously Antonio Pierce trying to play for a job. And Sean Payton trying to prove that what he did with Russell Wilson was right. So yeah, Denver right now, 8-8, Vegas 7-9. Like, these teams aren't getting up into this top tier. So these teams are going to play, right? Division game. They're going to play. We saw Stidham come in last week, did drop back 32 times. I think you can make your player pool at 4-9. At least he's going to get out there and get the full game. Something to consider. Probably not going to Aiden O'Connell, I don't think. He did drop back 47 times. Now he's had 20 points in 2 of the last 3 weeks. Yeah, maybe he's a little bit more competent than I thought. Waiting on the running back stuff. Zamir White was chalk last week. The role is huge. So I think he's still completely fine if Jacobs is out. But keep an eye there. And then I just can't get into these Denver backs. Like, I just don't think there's a ceiling there. It's split. Like, I just don't know if I trust the offense. Stidham's more likely to maybe sling it. Like, I'm not getting into it. Adams, though, I kind of called that Adams as a big play last week. And he went ballistic. 21 targets, 13 for 126 and 2. Best game of the year. And it's crazy. Like, Adams such an up and down year. And then we still get to the end of the year. He's going to be at 100 for 100 for almost 11 or 1,200 and at least 7 touchdowns. Like, that's Devontae Adams for you. But he does it in bulk. And Aiden O'Connell, though, 2 of the last 3 weeks has found him. And I think, why not keep feeding the guy? He probably wants to pad his stats at this point, if I'm being honest. Jacoby Myers can make your pool. I don't really trust many of these Denver receivers. Even Judy with all the opportunity last week. Jag, just a guy. Can't do it. Doesn't get it done. Too expensive at 5,100. Yes, bump. I don't know how to say your name. Bump God there. Yeah, Eckler, 110 total yards, gets $100,000. So something to consider there for contract incentive stuff on Eckler. Tight ends in this game. If Michael Mayer plays, he can make your pool in what is a really good matchup for tight ends. That's about it. All right, Giants-Eagles. It's a huge game for the Eagles, and the Giants definitely want to play spoiler. I, as a Giants fan, do not want them to play spoiler because the Giants can move all the way up to the 3rd pick, depending on how things crack this week. So I really want the Giants to lose this game. These 2 teams played 2 weeks ago. The Giants gave them a real fit on Christmas. This ended up being a really high-scoring game, too, and Tyrod only played a half. So this is definitely a game that if you think that Christmas Day game was any kind of indication, it could beat this 43.5, right? And Tyrod can move the ball. It's in New York. It's probably going to be all Philly fans, but it's in New York. And Jalen Hurts is an excellent play as our top quarterback option of the week. Excellent play. He's got one of the highest floors for sure. There's no Lamar on this slate. There's no Josh Allen on this slate. There's no Mahomes on this slate, really. So when you're talking about a floor ceiling combo, there's no one better than Jalen Hurts. So Jalen Hurts is great. And the Eagles need to win. The Eagles, it's crazy they don't control their own destiny. I wish it wasn't at the hands of the Cowboys, but as a Giants fan, I am not upset to see them fumble the bag this badly. But they do need to try to win to have a shot at the division if the Commanders can somehow upset the Cowboys, right? So they're going to be playing. The worst they can get to is the 5 seed, but they're going to be playing unless they scoreboard watch a little bit. If Dallas is up 28-0 in the 3rd quarter, would I be surprised if Nick Sirianni benches Jalen Hurts in the 2nd half? I really wouldn't. So I think that's something to consider to bake in a little bit of risk. Tyrod, though, I think Tyrod's an awesome play. We all liked him last week at only 46. Now he's up all up to 53, but this is like a great matchup, right? The Eagles have been terrible against opposing quarterbacks and through the air. He had a little something with his legs. Threw a beautiful deep ball last week. Tyrod's a very competent quarterback. 5'3", Tyrod, probably my favorite spend down option of the week. Saquon, not a great matchup, but he's going to get fed. DeAndre Swift, had 92 yards and a touchdown in the same matchup. But really, 2nd half of the year for DeAndre Swift has not been that impressive from a stealing perspective. So if I'm attacking this game, it's probably through the receivers, right? A.J. Brown, he hasn't had a 30-point game going back all the way down to week 8 when we were talking about him for Offensive Player of the Year. Since then, he's been good, but not elite. Against the Giants 2 weeks ago, 6 for 80. Let's see if Deonte Banks, their rookie corner, plays. But 8-7 A.J. Brown at this point is a little scary. Maybe they finally get it right. Now, Devonta Smith also might not play. He's got an ankle injury. So then I think at that point, A.J. Brown's action is crazy. Julio Jones had 2 touchdowns on 2 targets last week. If Devonta Smith is out, I think you could definitely look there as well. Maybe not totally cooked the same way we thought he was. And then the most expensive Giants receiver is Wan'Dale Robinson, who had a touchdown pulled back last week and still had 6 for 55. Oh, no, he had a rushing touchdown. Sorry. He had 6 for 55 and a rushing touchdown for 20 points. The guy's showing a more of a floor ceiling combo than I thought for his price. He could definitely be in play here for you. And then Darius Slayton also been really solid the last 2 weeks. He had that 18-point game in the same matchup on Christmas, went for 23.6 points in week 17 against the Rams. So I think Slayton's definitely going to be, you know, if you're looking for cheap receivers this week, the Giants and Eagles perhaps are a place you can look. And then from the tight end perspective, Goddard and Waller should both make your player pool. All right, 2 more games. I know we're going a little bit over here. Important to talk through all this stuff. This one's a scary one too. Niners, nothing to play for. The Rams, however, do have something to play for. So the Niners are locked in to the 1 seed. The Rams don't have too much to play for. They're either going to be the 6 or the 7 seed. I'm sure they'd rather be the 6 seed, right? You'd rather be higher up. This could be a potential rest spot. As Miko notes here, said worth noting, McVay played his starters in a similar spot in 2020 in the final week, but something to consider there. I don't know what San Francisco's going to do. Darnold should be in play in this matchup, I think. It's a good play. And then Kieran Williams, excellent if he gets the full role. McCaffrey's already listed out. He's got a hammy or whatever, so maybe they give Elijah Mitchell that work. Maybe they give Jordan Mason that work. Not the best matchup against the Rams, but you can consider them as cheap options. And then Kupp and Nakua can both make your player pool, assuming those guys go all out. I don't think Debo and Ayuk are playable this week, assuming they're going to sit their guys, but you can get into some of the other guys. Ronnie Bell may be my favorite. And then same thing, tight end here. I guess, I don't know if it's going to be Charlie Warner or if Ross Dwelly's available, but if you're looking for ultimate punts, late swap punts, those are your guys. All right, last game of the slate. Cowboys, Commanders. Cowboys win, and they win the division. It's that simple. They're going to go and play, and it's a great matchup. They are a 30-point team total. This is the Commanders we're talking about. I probably want a ton of Cowboys action this week. You know who the guys are. They're not going to sit anyone. They got to play. It's a great matchup. So Dak, 8K, maybe a little bit safer than Hurts at 8-1. Now, Hurts has the higher floor. There's no doubt about it. Higher floor ceiling combo. Dak, I feel safer, will go all out in this game at 8K. I think there's a better chance that Sirianni sits Hurts in the second half than McCarthy sits Dak. But, you know, probably still prefer Hurts slightly from the ceiling perspective, but Dak's a great play. Pollard, I mean, the guy just can't get in the end zone. I don't know what's going on, but still the lead back. Got to consider him in this matchup. And then, the other side, I'm not getting into the Washington quarterback here. I'd probably, if I'm attacking this, there's plenty of cheap quarterbacks on this slate. And if I'm attacking this game, I think I want it to be on the Dallas side from a full game stack perspective. Probably the same thing with the running backs. Receivers, though, you could get into the guys that bring backs, whether it's McLaurin, Samuel, or Dotson. And then Lamb or Brandon Cooks, very much in play. Lamb was the cover boy of this video. Lamb went off, won everybody their fantasy championships last week, and will have a great opportunity to do it again, as he's having just one of the best seasons I can remember from a receiver. 120, 1,600 yards, 12 touchdowns. I think he should be in play for Offensive Player of the Year. We'll see if he is. Ferguson can definitely make your player pool. And that's it. And a little bit of a different show this week, going team game by game. Hopefully it was helpful for you, not only to kind of start looking at prices and people for this DFS slate, but to talk about motivation. Really important. Keep your eye on all of our projections behind the paywall. We will be updating them with any information we get from a motivation perspective. Enjoy the Week 18 Carnival. It always is fun, chaotic, exciting. If your teams are still alive that you root for, good luck to them. If you won a fantasy championship, congratulations to you. If you had a best ball championship or made so many best ball, congratulations to you. Happy New Year. I hope you've all had a very happy and healthy and safe New Year. And thank you all for tuning in all season long on this First Look show. Unsure on the playoff schedule. I think last year I did them through the first 2 weeks of the playoffs. I will discuss with my higher ups at ETR and see if we'll be doing these shows over the next couple weeks. But if not, thank you all so much for tuning in. I will be back hopefully with you either next week or next year. Good luck in Week 18 and going into the playoffs. Take care, everybody.